Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I will be explaining the powers and abilities of Hank Pym. Over the years, Hank Pym has taken on many different identities. And with each one, he had numerous superpowers. First, I'll start out with Hank's genius intellect, which is what gave him all of his superpowers. Hank Pym is one of the smartest beings in the Marvel Universe. And I'll be breaking down his genius into 4 separate parts. He is the best biologist and entomologist. He's also a great physicist and a skilled mechanical engineer. I'll start with biology. Hank Pym is so good at biology that he can straight up give people superpowers, such as his partner, the Wasp, whom he attached microscopic wings to and gave her the ability to communicate with wasps and the ability to shoot bioelectric blasts from her hands. He's even able to master mutant physiology. The mutant Firestar, whose powers come from radiation, the radiation that she generated from inside herself was solely affecting her negatively. Hank explained that most mutants are born with an immunity to their own powers to protect themselves, but Firestar was born with a deficiency. And so Hank developed a suit for her to wear, which by over time would activate her natural immunity that she was supposed to have, and it healed her. Hank, with the help of Tony Stark, has been able to rebuild Vision and help him with his biological problems numerous times. Next up, we have entomology. Hank Pym's study of ants led him to create an electronic helmet which could scan his own brainwaves and transmit them to the ants, essentially mind-controlling them and/or communicating with them, and he could read their thoughts as well. Tony Stark is the undisputable master of machines in the Marvel Universe. Hank Pym is adept in engineering as well, but only to a limited degree, as when he first created a body for Ultron, it was very unadvanced, basically a rolling trash can. Over time, Hank Pym became better at engineering, and he was able to create a little spaceship for himself. The ship was called Rover. It had 2 seats, and he used it when he was a West Coast Avenger. It could fly at a decent speed, and it had the ability to spring out mechanical arms, which could pick up heavy weights like cars. Now for what Hank Pym is best known for, which is his physics prowess, in which he used to create the Pym particle, which gave him his amazing growing and shrinking abilities. It was originally a liquid in which he would pour on himself or objects, and which would cause them to shrink. Eventually, he used pills that he would swallow, each one dedicated to a different size, and then it would give him the effect. And then, eventually, he made the Pym particles into a gaseous form, in which he would release from his belt, which could grow and shrink him. Now, of course, when Hank is small, he can ride ants, and is very stealthy. And when he grows big, the bigger he is, the stronger he is, and he also increases in durability. The way the Pym particles work is when he shrinks, he shunts his mass to another dimension called cosmos, and when he grows, he draws on mass from that dimension. And he's been to that world of cosmos several different times and has encountered scary monsters there. The Pym particles are so powerful, Hank can use them to shrink infinitely, and when he does, he goes to a dimension called the microverse, in which has many different worlds or realms, not unlike that of Asgard. It's a whole universe that can only be reached through shrinking. And numerous different creatures and thriving species live here. Hank can also use the Pym particles the opposite way, to grow infinitely, and when he does, he goes to a dimension called overspace, which is the place where the abstract entities of the universe live, like the living tribunal and eternity himself. And Hank Pym has gone there to commune with these beings Hank Pym has used the Pym particles so much that his body has absorbed them, and he can grow and shrink at will, with no equipment needed. Hank has even gained the ability to grow and shrink other things simply by touching them, and he can grow and shrink them infinitely as well, just like he can himself. As we can see here, Hank simply touches the absorbing man on the chest and brings him to overspace. As for weapons and tech, when Hank Pym was Yellow Jacket, he designed a wingsuit in which granted him the ability to fly. He also created electronic stingers, which he would overcharge the stingers from the kinetic energy in which his wings would build up, and he could discharge lasers. At one point, Hank also kept a small ship on the side of his belt. As for skills, Hank Pym is mostly a man of science, but, like all Avengers, Hank Pym has been trained in hand-to-hand combat by Captain America, and him combining his training with his growing and shrinking abilities makes him a formidable combatant. Hank Pym became Ant-Man because his first wife, Maria, was killed by criminals, so he became a superhero to fight back. This is the main reason why Hank has always been moody, and was often adverse to dating Janet, because he didn't want to lose someone again, and because Janet looked almost exactly like his first wife. Hank Pym was a founding member of the Avengers. In fact, he and Janet were the ones who came up with the idea for the original team to stick together. It was Hank Pym himself who grabbed Captain America and pulled him out of the ice into the Avengers submarine. Hank Pym as Giant Man went on to fight alongside Earth's mightiest heroes against several threats, such as Kang the Conqueror and the Masters of Evil. But eventually, when a new team lineup came, Hank decided to retire until he returned as Goliath in a brand new costume. From there, he went on to lead the Avengers, personally making Black Panther a member of the roster. And this marks the end of Hank Pym's golden years as an Avenger, because it's at this time that he created the psychotic robot Ultron. In an attempt to map his own brain patterns onto a machine, he created Ultron, artificial life. But it turned on him and went insane. Once Ultron turned on his master, he created a being even more advanced than himself, the Vision. He sent to kill the Avengers. But Vision turned good. And upon doing so, Hank Pym made him an Avenger, causing the artificial man to shed a tear. After all the stress of leading this new team with brand new members like Black Panther and Vision, and the horrifying creation of Ultron, Hank Pym lashed out in anger from all the stress that had been building up, and he accidentally spilled experimental chemicals on him, causing him to have a mental breakdown and develop another personality, one called Yellow Jacket. This personality was highly aggressive and harsh on criminals. It was Hank's brain trying to make himself the perfect mate for Janet. Someone who was aggressive and could take down the bad guys with ease, and even matched her in abilities and similar color scheme. Janet tried to fix Hank's state by getting married to him, hoping that the stability of a relationship would fix his brain. And at the wedding, the Avengers were attacked by the Circus of Crime, in which the conflict caused Hank to go back to normal and re-emerge as Goliath. Afterwards, with Hank's normal mental state, he continued to keep the Yellow Jacket costume and abilities, and everything seemed fine for years, until multiple things built up, and Hank started to mentally deteriorate once more. Eventually, Hank Pym was court-martialed by the other Avengers for being too aggressive towards the bad guys. This caused Hank to have a mental snap, in which he created a robot that was designed to attack the Avengers, but he had a secret way to defeat it, and he was going to set it up so like it was a random robot attacking, and he would be the hero. Janet found out his plan and tried to stop him. But in a fit of rage, Hank accidentally struck his wife. And at the court-martial, Janet revealed this, and Hank Pym was kicked out of the Avengers. Eventually, Hank Pym returned to the West Coast Avengers. He only operated as the team scientist and base manager, helping fix equipment and advising team members. But eventually Hank Pym became depressed because of past failures and the creation of Ultron. Eventually Hank's grief became so bad that he tried to take his own life, but Hank was stopped in the act by fellow Avenger Firebird, who offered him words of comfort. And after that, Hank rejoined the Avengers as an active member, although trying not to be a superhero, by not wearing a hero costume and only calling himself Dr. Pym, and relying on gadgets, not growing and shrinking. Eventually Hank Pym came out of this stage and went back to being a superhero again, and growing and shrinking. And over time, depending on his mood or mental state, he would switch costumes and call himself different names. But all the while he was a hero, fighting with the Avengers and scoring a major victory over Ultron, which Hank Pym took 2 anti-metal rods and pummeled Ultron into the ground until he turned him into nothingness. Eventually Ultron returned, and with his most sinister plot to date, he combined himself with Hank Pym, taking over Hank's physiology and developing a half Pym, half Ultron personality split. The prevailing theory by people like Iron Man and others is that Ultron is simply reanimating Hank's dead corpse, and that Hank Pym is no longer in there and is truly dead. But I hope that's not the case. I really hope Hank Pym returns. What Hank Pym represents on the Avengers is second chances, to make up for one's mistakes, and to keep on going, even through so much adversity. The story of Hank Pym perfectly illustrates Avengers aren't just an army of Earth's mightiest heroes. They're also a place where anyone who wants to do anything good can come, no matter who they are, what they look like, or where they're from. This is a quote from Hank. Jocasta just asked me where I'd be without the Avengers. I've thought long and hard about that, and I know, without question, I'd be dead, or insane, or in prison, or just not doing anyone much good. The Avengers have saved the world countless times, but they've also saved me. Have I faced hard times as a result of being an Avenger? Definitely, but I've also experienced some of the greatest moments of my life. Seen and done things no scientist could ever imagine. I've had the privilege of fighting beside some of the world's greatest heroes and my best friends. And I've found happiness. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time.